guys, it's Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Today's video is going to be my March reading wrap up. This month I read a total of 14 books because I was sick for 2 weeks and then quarantine. So I had a lot of time on my hands to read. I'm not gonna make this introduction too long because I have a lot to go through. So I'm just going to start with my stats. So as of last month, I had 62 books left in my reading goal for the year. And because I read 14 books, I am down to 48. So I'm happy because that gives me a little bit of a leeway the rest of the year. I don't have to pressure myself to read a lot. Then for reading one 500-page book a month, I failed. I did not read any books that are over 100 pages, 500 pages, sorry. There's some that are close, like 450, 470, but nothing that got to the 500 mark. So I am 2 months behind. So for next month, my goal is to read 2 500-page books. And I think I can do it because I'm pretty sure we'll still be on quarantine. And then for my A to Z challenge, I read 5 more letters. You would think that because I read 14 books, I would have more letters, but a lot of the letters were already taken. For the PopSugar reading challenge, I completed 6 prompts and I'll go through those later. So reading first from the A to Z reading challenge. The first letter that I'm going to talk about is the letter B as in boy. And for that, I read Blood of My Blood by Barry Lyga. This is the third and final book in the I Hunt Killers series. I can't talk much about this book because it's a finale in the trilogy, but I just want to say that I loved it. I love this trilogy so much. It's a little bit of a dark series. We follow this boy whose dad is a serial killer, and as he is growing older, like his dad was a serial killer and then he disappeared, but then things are starting to happen again and the police think that his dad is back at it. The thing is that our main character, Jazz, he has the ability to think like his dad. So the police are working with him, or he's working with the police to kind of anticipate his dad's next step and trying to save the victim. So this was very, very entertaining. This book picks up right after the second book. I didn't have a hard time catching up to the story, so really, really enjoyed it. I gave this whole series a 4 out of 5. For the letter C, I completed The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I read this book because of books with Lala. And I just saw it on Book Outlet and I decided to pick it up one day. This book was a little bit confusing. This follows this couple who have a little girl, and then this group of people who believe that the end of the world is coming, and the only way to prevent the end of the world is if they get this family to do a certain thing. I don't want to say it because I don't know if that's a spoiler or not. So we follow this cult, I guess, if you want to call them that, kind of kidnap this family and try to get them to do this one thing, and then this family trying to escape the cult. It was interesting. It read super, super fast. I really enjoyed it. It just kind of like left me wondering, like, what did I just read? Like, what just happened? So if you like to be left with that kind of mindset, I think you would enjoy it. I enjoyed the ending. A lot of people kind of find it very unsatisfying, but I thought it fit the story. The next letter that I finished was the letter I, and for that I'm going with a whole series. And this is the Iron Knight or the Iron King series. What is it called? Oh, the Iron Face series. But you have the Iron King, the Iron Daughter, the Iron Queen, and the Iron Knight. I thought this was going to be a series, like a 4-book series, because on Goodreads this is labeled as the Iron Fate 4, but in reality you have a trilogy and then kind of like a follow-up story to this trilogy. This book picks up right after this trilogy, so I'm going to talk about the trilogy first, which is these 3. And for this story we follow this girl Megan, who is half human, half fae. She doesn't know that she is half and half until some things start happening in her life. Then her brother goes missing, and in a quest to find her brother, she realizes that she is a half fae and actually half heir of a fae kingdom. And so we follow her as she goes through the quest to find out who she is. She gets into trouble. She has to fight some battles to rescue her brother and her family. A lot of action. These books read really fast, and they have terrible covers. Maybe because this is like the early YA covers, but you know, the girl in the cover, I thought this was gonna be like set in medieval times because of the cover. I don't know, I just thought that it was like, she looked kind of like medievally, like her hair, and I don't know. But this is actually like present day. So yeah, it's present day, and then she goes into the fairy world. Really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. Then the Iron Knight. This follows the events right after the 3rd book in the Iron Face series, and we follow one of the love interests in a quest that he has. He has to go on a quest. I can't say because it'll ruin what happened in the series, but he has to go on a quest because of what happened in the events of the trilogy. This book had a twist at the end that I was like, what? What is happening? Like, all of this for that? So it's a good twist. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It was a nice kind of like follow-up. I know there's another series. It's like the Iron, I don't know, it's another series, but I thought it was gonna be maybe like the Iron Fate 5, but then when I looked it up on Goodreads, it's a completely different series. I don't think I'll be picking it up though, just because I have 1,000 books to read, but I really enjoyed it, and it was a nice surprise. I have owned these 4 books for about, I wanna say like 5-6 years. That's how old they were in my TBR, so I'm just very excited to finally have picked them up. Really did enjoy it. Then for the letter O, I picked up One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is my first Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I've read, and I really enjoyed it. I know she has a lot of books out there that are very popular, but this was the first one that I picked up, and I really enjoyed it. This follows a girl whose husband is presumed to be dead, and she moves on with her life, and now she is engaged to her love of her life. And it turns out that when she gets engaged, her previously thought of deceased husband turns out to be alive, and he comes back into her life, and now she has to make a choice between her first love of her life or her second love of her life. So it's a really good book. It's a really good story. I read this book super fast. I was very engaged, and I really care about the characters. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really did enjoy it. Then the last A to Z letter that I read was for the letter X, and this title has an X within the title because it's hard to find a book that starts with the letter X. But I am talking about The Next Person You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. I really enjoy Mitch Albom books. This is the 3rd one that I've read. I think, yeah. I've read Tuesdays with Morrie, and then the 5 People You Meet in Heaven, and then this one. And this is a follow-up to the 5 People You Meet in Heaven. I am always really surprised at how much emotional impact Mitch Albom can pack into such tiny books. All his books are this small and this skinny. He doesn't really need to fill the story with fluff that's unnecessary. I became attached to the character really fast. And I feel like I can't say much about the story. Obviously, our main character dies, and then she meets 5 people in heaven that impacted her life in some way when she was alive. And I just, like I said, I am amazed at how much I cared about this girl, even though the story is very short. But Mitch Albom is very effective in translating his thoughts and just getting to the point. Like I said, no extra fluff is needed. Really good book, and I give it 5 out of 5 stars. Now for the PopSugar Reading Challenge, I do have some books that I've already mentioned, but I'm going to start with the one book that filled 3 prompts with just one book. So the book that I'm talking about is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. And this book completed the prompts of a book with a made-up language. It's a sci-fi book, and there's like a creature here who has its own language, and the people have to decipher what the creature is trying to say to them. And then also a book published in the month of your birthday. This was published in February of 2014. I was born in February. And then a book about or by a woman in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. I think that's what it stands for. And we follow our main character here. She's a scientist because it's a sci-fi book. So This book was very reminiscent of that movie with, oh my God, what is the name? Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner. I'm blanking out on the name, but it was very, very similar. I know that Natalie Portman made the movie for this book, and I really want to watch it, so hopefully I can watch it tonight. But this book was kind of like, what did I just read? This was another book that, maybe because it's science fiction and my brain just can't really process like all the science that's happening in here, but it is a trilogy. I do own the second book. And I will be continuing on. Like I said, this book was super fast to read and very easy to read. And it was interesting, but I was confused. I'm not gonna lie, in some parts here. We follow a group of women who are exploring this area. It's called like Area X, I think that's what it's called. And they're just trying to find out what's going on in this area. There's a lot of people going missing, people dying, and there's kind of like this, not monster or presence, but they're just trying to find out what is happening in this area. So it was good, but like I said, maybe it was just too sciencey for me, that I had a hard time following along on some areas, but I did enjoy it enough to want to read the second book. And just to recap the other books that I did finish, the prompt for a book that passes the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test, if I'm not mistaken, is where our characters have a conversation or something like that that does not have any romantic interest. And I think The Cabin at the End of the World, really the whole book, it passes the Bechdel test because there's not that much romance in here. We're just following a family who's trying to escape this group of crazy people that are trying to get them to do something. So I think the whole book passes the Bechdel test. Then for a book with a bird on the cover, Blood of My Blood by Barry Lyga has a huge crow in the cover. Now I'm really quickly going to cover the rest of the books that I read that do not fit any kind of prompt or letter in the alphabet. The first one is My Life Next Door by Huntley Fitzpatrick. This book was really cute. We follow this girl, her name is Samantha. She's the daughter of a senator who is in the process of doing like a re-election type time. And then they have their neighbors, the Garretts, who have like 1,000 kids, and the mom's currently pregnant. And so the senator kind of frowns upon that family because they have that many kids. She finds it to be very irresponsible, and she's kind of like brought up her kids very like high and mighty type. But of course, we have our main character Samantha, who falls for one of the boys. It's a cute book. It reads really, really fast. It's the kind of book that I needed to read after reading something like The Cabin at the End of the World or Annihilation, when there was a lot of like really thinking and processing. I needed something light and fluffy to kind of like let my brain rest, and this was one of them. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a solid 3. I didn't love it as much as a lot of people on YouTube loved it, but I think it's a solid book. The next book that I finished was Pushing the Limits by Katie McGarry. Can we just talk about this cover? I hate this cover. It's so cheesy and I hate that cover. But anyway, in this book we follow Echo, who went through a traumatic event when she was younger than she is currently here, and she kind of repressed it in her memory and she can't quite remember. And then we follow Noah, who is a kind of like a rebel type person whose parents have died, and he is the young troubled teenager, which eventually they find each other, they help each other. The themes in this book are very dark. They both go, I think more so Echo goes through a very traumatic event in her life, and it's very dark. I really enjoyed how our characters here kind of took the time to get to know each other. There was no insta love, which I enjoyed. I bought the romance by the time that it happened. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was good, solid YA. I know this was very hyped a long time ago. When was this book written? 2012, so it's been a while. I'm catching up on my older backlisted books, but anyway, I did enjoy it. I would consider reading more from Katie McGarry from this series. Then I read Geekerella by Ashley Poston. This book was so cute. If you're into like comic books, I think you're gonna enjoy this because this, of course, is a play on Cinderella, and we follow our main character. What is her name? It's been a while since I read this book. Ellie or Elle, I don't know how you would say it, but we follow her living with her stepmom and stepsisters. Her father created something called some sort of like Comic-Con event, and so she's been trying to go to this Comic-Con event for a long time, and so the Comic-Con ends up being like the ball of Cinderella. And then our Prince Charming is this guy. What is his name? I don't even remember his name. It's a teen actor, Darian Freeman, who has just signed up to play like this very popular character on a TV series type sort of thing. And so he's like the main attraction at this Comic-Con. And so he's like our Prince Charming. And our girl Ellie here is working really hard to save money to go into this Comic-Con, and there's like no tickets available anywhere else, and one of her stepsisters steals her ticket, so she goes to the ball. So now she's trying to sneak into the Comic-Con to try to, it's Cinderella but for nerds. I love it. It's really fun. Like I said, if you're into comic books and Comic-Con and things of that nature, I think you'll love it. But this was super cute. I loved it. Highly recommend. The next book that I read was Watching You by Lisa Jewell. This book is a mystery novel in which it has several points of views, and it's one of those books where every single person in this point of view has a secret. And it turns out that like all the neighbors are spying on each other, and they all have their own assumptions as to what each other person is hiding, and it's not what it seems to be. So there's secrets left and right here. You really don't know what's gonna happen till the end of the book, and I think that's what made it very interesting for me. I was able to stay engaged and really pay attention to these characters, and nothing was what I thought it was. Every time I thought I had to figure it out, it wasn't what I thought it was, and I think that's a good sign of a good book. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a good thriller if you're into thrillers. And then last but not least, another thriller, I read The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. This book I enjoyed so much, like 90% of the book. But at the end of the book, the big reveal and the finale, I just felt like everything wrapped up really fast, and it was very unsatisfying. So we follow this girl, what is her name? Lucy, whose mother-in-law was found dead in her home. And so you're following through the investigation and kind of like going back in time to kind of get a feel of how the mother-in-law was and who could have had the motive to kill her. So you're alternating between past and future being past and present being the investigation trying to find out who killed her, and you kind of have your theories about who could have done it and the motives of why they could have done it. But like I said, towards the end, like really the end of this book, when it's revealed who did it and why, it just felt kind of rushed, kind of like this, just wrap it up and finish it. So the payoff wasn't very it wasn't good enough for me. It just didn't care for it, and it kind of felt like it cheapened the whole experience of the whole book, because the whole book as a whole, I think it was really good. Like I said, it was the ending that kind of like didn't do it for me. So very unsatisfying, kind of disappointing, but I still enjoyed it. I would recommend it. Maybe that's just how I feel about the ending. Maybe you wouldn't feel about that ending this way like I did, but that's just how I felt. So there you go, guys. That's a long video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys were reading or planning to read, and I will see you on the next one.